The Galactic Council Hall was an architectural marvel of transparent alloys and humming graviton fields, orbiting a dying sun in a neutral sector. Its interior smelled faintly of ozone, heated metal, and formality. Delegates from 73 known civilizations filled the curved tiers of the amphitheater, voices subdued, robes fluttering in climate-regulated air. They had gathered for yet another procedural dispute, minor according to the schedule. But nothing about the human delegation was ever truly minor anymore. Ambassador Gareth Wren of Earth walked with deliberate ease, his tailored black suit somehow crisper than the vacuum outside. A steaming cup of coffee balanced in one hand, the other held a diplomatic folder stamped with an Earth insignia, a subtle fusion of olive branch and blade. He moved like a man arriving at a garden party, not a tribunal. The buzz in the chamber lowered as he approached the speaking podium. Across from him, High Regent Krovax of the Zarkant Dominion uncoiled his massive frame, scales shimmering green under artificial starlight. He clicked his fangs together once, a ritualized threat in Zarkant culture, and narrowed obsidian eyes at the human. "I see Earth sends its orator of pleasant lies," Krovax hissed. "Fitting. Your voice is more dangerous than your fleet." Garrett smiled, a gesture warm and unbothered. "Ah, Regent Krovax. It's always a pleasure to be called dangerous before I've even sipped my drink." The audience chuckled nervously, some sincerely, others feigning it. Politeness was mandatory in the hall, so was pretending not to notice the tremor beneath it all. Moderator Sinzal, a chitinous arachniform whose voice resonated like wind through a flute, tapped the center lectern with a claw. "This session is now in order. The Zarkant Dominion has submitted a grievance against the United Territories of Earth regarding, quote, unprovoked hostile actions on Galactic Day 4117.32 in the Grelthus Fringe. Earth has submitted a counterstatement. Ambassador Wren, you may proceed." Gareth nodded, sipped, then stepped forward. "Honored representatives, we regret that this complaint has become necessary. The events in the Grelthus Fringe were not, as described, unprovoked. They were a measured response to a massacre." A ripple passed through the delegates. Krovax's tail lashed. "Your colony was a military outpost, one that failed to identify itself as such. Collateral, tragic, yes. But war." "There was no war," Gareth interrupted gently. "There were only families, civilians, farmers, 17 children under the age of 10. We have the transmission logs, planetary scans, the full orbital surveillance." He slid a data shard into the lectern port. A silent image shimmered above them, smoke rising from red dust, broken play structures twisted into slag. No blood, but every viewer filled in the gaps instinctively. Krovax spat, "Visual propaganda. You're masters of it." "And yet," Gareth replied smoothly, "you're here accusing us of mastery over violence." The sarcasm didn't sting. It smothered. Krovax growled, but the council remained quiet, watching. Sinzal clicked twice for attention. "The Dominion claims the attack was a misfire, an automated drone test gone off course. They have issued regrets." "Regrets," Gareth repeated softly. He looked around. "May I ask, if an Earth drone accidentally vaporized the egg clusters of a Zarkant nursery, would regret suffice?" The murmuring returned, louder this time. Even species unfamiliar with sarcasm understood its weight in this room. Krovax bared his fangs. "You retaliated by infiltrating 3 of our black sites and seizing over 200 soldiers. That is not proportionate. That is declaration." Gareth closed his folder, tapping it once for emphasis. "We responded with restraint and clarity. We extracted the personnel directly responsible for the civilian deaths. We left their command structures intact, their fleets untouched, and sent no broadcast. You, Regent, brought this into the light, not us." Sinzal turned slightly. "Ambassador Wren, are you saying Earth does not consider this an act of war?" "We consider it justice," Gareth replied. "Surgical, silent, and only as wide as it needed to be. War would look different." A pregnant pause. Delegate Cyric of the Solari Hive clicked his mandibles. If this is your restraint, what does Earth's war look like? Gareth took another sip of his coffee. You wouldn't live to write the answer. Laughter flickered, unsure and short-lived. Not because the joke failed, because no one was entirely sure it was a joke. Sin Zhao leaned forward. The Council must consider whether Earth has violated Galactic Resolution 82, the Anti-Provocation Accord. Would Earth care to define its current diplomatic posture? Gareth nodded. Certainly. Earth's posture remains defensive, but not submissive. We are not seeking war. We are seeking accountability. And if accountability is too alien a concept, then let us make it universal. Krovax bellowed. You think yourselves arbiters now? You, a species barely a galactic century old. We don't think, Gareth said. We remember. The words landed heavier than any threat. A few delegates shifted uncomfortably. Everyone knew humanity's arrival in the galactic community had come with legends, unverified stories of ancient wars, extinct threats, and Earth's rumored ejection from 2 prior council attempts. The humans had shown up with smiles and treaties. But behind those treaties had always been silence. Calculated, practiced, unnerving silence. Sin Zhao scanned the room. It appears there is a fundamental divergence in definitions. Gareth gestured. Then allow me to clarify Earth's updated position. Krovax sneered. By all means. Entertain us. Gareth looked directly into the floating lens of the media drone now orbiting him. Earth does not negotiate with murderers. Those who target the innocent, who bomb schools and hospitals, who apologize only after the ash has cooled. They are not states. They are not allies. They are problems. He paused just long enough. And we solve problems. The lens shuddered as it adjusted focus. Delegates who had been smirking minutes before were now blinking in silence. Not because of the words, but because of the man who said them, the way he said them. Calm, controlled, final. Krovax's voice dropped to a growl. This is your warning, then? No, Gareth said. This is your record. He stepped away from the podium, finishing his coffee in one elegant tilt. He set the cup down with quiet reverence, an oddly human thing to do, and bowed slightly to Sin Zhao. I yield the floor. Sin Zhao clicked twice in acknowledgement. Gareth turned without waiting for Krovax's reply. He knew the alien would hiss and snarl and perform dominance for the crowd. But the play had ended. The lights had dimmed. All that remained was interpretation. The delegates watched him go, whispers rising like smoke behind him. Every step of his leather shoes echoed the same unspoken truth. Earth hadn't overreacted. Earth had waited, and then struck with surgical, moral fury. As the chamber descended into bureaucratic murmurs and hurried translations, Gareth stepped into the exit corridor. Behind him, the datapad he'd left on the podium flickered once more. A final image on its screen. 17 names. 17 ages. A memorial. Not a threat, but no less effective. And above it, a single sentence written in perfect galactic standard, in a language that no longer bluffed. We prefer peace, but our dead don't. The diplomatic suite assigned to Earth was a quiet chamber tucked along the outer curve of the Council station, with transparent walls revealing the great nothing of space and the nearby sun's dying light. Ambassador Gareth Wren stood before that view with his back straight, sipping another cup of coffee, watching distant stars pulse like silent alarm bells. Behind him, the room hummed with encrypted transmissions, low-level data pulses only the human team could read, interpret, or, more dangerously, interrupt. He didn't need to turn when the door hissed open. Colonel Mara Lin stepped inside, dressed not in uniform, but in a sharp-cut civilian blazer. Her eyes held none of Gareth's diplomatic softness. They were all edge, quietly scanning the space for hidden microphones, concealed optics. She handed him a fresh tablet. It's confirmed, she said, without preamble. Zarkan subcommanders are purging their own black sites. They think the leaks came from within. Gareth took the tablet, scanned the encrypted contents briefly, and gave a satisfied nod. Paranoia is such a self-cleaning tool, isn't it? We haven't fired a shot, Mara said. Yet 4 Dominion generals are missing, 3 facilities burned from the inside out, and their High Regent is screaming into the void on every open channel. "Let him scream," Gareth murmured. "It's the only sound he controls now." Outside the suite, the council hall churned with chaos disguised as procedure. Delegate whispers had turned into covert meetings. For the first time since Earth's induction, other species were hesitating before aligning with power blocks. The Zarkant Dominion, once untouchable, now stood exposed, frightened not of Earth's firepower, but of what Earth might already know. In the hallways, representatives glanced sideways when humans passed. No longer the charming, harmless newcomers. Now they carried an aura that couldn't be unlearned, an ancient weight behind modern smiles. Gareth's next public address was scheduled within the hour. He stood calmly in front of the mirror, adjusting the silver pin at his collar. An Earth insignia made of 2 circles, a planet inside a targeting reticle. Hidden in plain sight. Mara spoke softly behind him. "There's a growing request from civilian council members to clarify what Protocol Rook actually is." He adjusted his cuffs. "They'll find out." That was rhetorical. Ah. They exchanged a glance. She was the soldier, he the diplomat. But in moments like this, their roles blurred. "They're afraid of us now," Mara said. "No," Gareth corrected gently. "They're afraid that we've always been what they thought we weren't." When he returned to the council chamber, the atmosphere had shifted from tension to tremble. Krovax wasn't present, likely recalled to control his imploding chain of command, but his absence only amplified the discomfort. The Zarkant Dominion had fallen into infighting. Multiple planetary governors were severing ties, claiming innocence or ignorance, all under the careful, quiet scrutiny of Earth's intelligence arm. Moderator Sinzao called the chamber to attention again, clicking her claws with subdued urgency. "Ambassador Wren, the Council requests clarification. Several species are concerned about covert operations conducted within Dominion territories. Are these actions sanctioned by Earth?" Gareth stepped forward not with theatricality, but with stillness. His calm was no longer charming. It was strategic. "Earth does not confirm nor deny operations in foreign sovereign space," he said. "However, we do assert that no Earth military personnel have fired upon any alien entity during this incident." Delegate Harrowan of the Threxel Enclave, a species of gaseous intellects who rarely interfered, spoke for the first time in decades. "Yet we see your fingerprints on the aftermath." Gareth inclined his head. "Perhaps. But I remind you, Earth was attacked. Earth's civilians were killed. We responded intelligently." Gasps were audible. Not from what he said, but how? No apologies, no detours. Just a clean statement of dominance wrapped in diplomacy. Delegate Rhinax of the Solari, a slow-speaking crystalline elder, leaned into the mic. "Then what is Protocol Rook, Ambassador?" He paused. The word hung in the room like a knife yet to be thrown. He allowed silence to gather before answering. "Protocol Rook is not a weapon. It's a posture. A demonstration of what happens when you teach humans how to speak softly, but then mistake them for being unarmed." Some laughed nervously. A few didn't move at all. He stepped closer to the main podium, his voice lowering with exquisite control. "Your species have warred for millennia. You've conquered and consumed, expanded and collapsed. Earth watched from the shadows of its blue planet, learning one very human truth. War is won long before the battle begins. It is won in perception, in misdirection, in patience." The lights dimmed slightly as the station shifted orbits. The sun outside cast shadows across his face, just enough to make his next words feel like prophecy. "We laid no traps," he continued. "We simply told the truth and waited for liars to panic." Delegate Cyric clicked again. "And the destruction of Dominion facilities?" "Internal," Garrett said, folding his hands. "Triggered by their own fail-safes. It seems, in their panic, they activated anti-infiltration purges." Pity, really. It wasn't pity. Everyone knew that. Sinzal attempted to restore balance. "And your message to the rest of us?" Gareth gave a small, gracious bow. "Transparency, peace, and a reminder. Those who hide behind mistakes must eventually face those who remember. Screens lit up across the chamber. Leaked footage, carefully edited, displayed Empire officers laughing over intercepted transmissions from the Grelphus colony. Jokes about how fragile human settlements were. Dismissals of retaliation. Disdain for Earth's supposed naivete. Gareth said nothing as it played. He only watched the delegates as they watched the footage. By the end, the chamber had gone completely still. Then, softly, he added, "We do not need to broadcast warnings. We merely reveal what was already spoken." Delegate Harrowin floated forward slightly. "You're changing the rules." "No," Gareth said. "We're making them visible." There was a long pause before Sinzal concluded the session. "The Council will deliberate. Earth's position has been noted." Afterward, as Gareth walked the halls, the stares felt different now. Not curious, not amused. Respectful, wary, terrified. Mara intercepted him near the docking bay. Her datapad glowed with updates. Chaos in Zarkand capital sectors, a silent retreat from 3 border systems, and 4 more alien civilizations requesting quiet discussions with Earth. "You've made us a pivot," she said, eyes sharp. "No," he corrected again. "We just reminded them that history isn't written by the powerful. It's written by the patient." He took her tablet, scanned the report, then held it to his chest. His eyes met hers. "It's time they understand that humanity never needed to roar. We just needed them to listen after the growl." As he passed into the lift toward the human consulate, Mara remained behind, watching. Even she, hardened soldier, felt something new beneath the strategy. A dark undercurrent. Not malice, just certainty. Precision cloaked in silk. She muttered aloud to no one, "They thought we were the prey." The lift closed, and above the diplomatic suite, a final message uploaded quietly into the Council archives, time-stamped, signed, and sealed under Earth's new diplomatic doctrine. The file name was a single sentence. "We do not negotiate with murderers." The transmission blackout began subtly. At first, just static over encrypted channels. Then full silences. Dominion vessels orbiting their inner colonies lost command pings. Subsector comms arrays failed to respond to standard pings, and bureaucratic consoles started spitting out priority alpha errors the Zarkand hadn't seen in a century. By the 3rd hour, 12 military outposts had dropped offline. By the 4th, internal Dominion alerts labeled their own systems as compromised. By the 5th, Zarkand High Command began executing internal purges, convinced they'd been infiltrated by traitors. They had no idea the only thing that had actually penetrated their systems was doubt. In a council side chamber lit by blue ambience and low murmurings, Gareth Wren stood once again before the interspecies delegates. His tone unaltered, posture straight, fingers calmly folded. He looked like he was about to recite poetry, not deliver a strategic blow. "I understand the concern," he said, gesturing with a diplomat's grace. "From the outside, it may seem as if Earth has been aggressive." Delegate Truin of the Gormek dynasty, a feline arthropod hybrid known for diplomatic cynicism, tilted her head. "Ambassador, 3 hours ago, the Dominion lost communications with half its forward sectors. No known fleets entered their territory. No weapons fired. But every internal line went dark. And you call this concern?" Gareth didn't blink. "Would it make you feel better if we'd used lasers instead?" A pause. The silence wasn't heavy. It was sharpened, surgical. Delegates leaned forward not because they wanted to interrupt, but because they couldn't afford to miss a single word. Colonel Mara Lin entered the chamber from a side corridor, not as a diplomat this time, but as confirmation. Her civilian disguise had been discarded. The markings of Earth's Strategic Deterrence Division now displayed on the inner lapel of her suit. Barely visible, deliberately so. Gareth turned his head slightly toward her. "Colonel, status." She handed him a new slate. Phase 3 complete. All embedded logic bombs within Dominion nodes have activated. No human personnel deployed. No direct engagements. Local Dominion security protocols triggered full lockdown on their own. Truin blinked slowly. "You're saying they did this to themselves?" Gareth raised a brow. I'm not saying anything. But it is curious, isn't it, how easily a regime built on fear will turn inward the moment it smells weakness. Delegate Rhinax's crystal-like voice cut across the room. You anticipated this. Or worse, you planned for it. We offered them the opportunity to de-escalate, Gareth said evenly. They chose to scream. On the chamber's central display, real-time telemetry data from independent observers flickered. Zarkant defense fleets were abandoning several moons. Research facilities had been evacuated without explanation. Civilian unrest, though carefully redacted by Dominion PR AI, had leaked into galactic channels. A quiet civil unraveling was in progress, and Earth had not fired a single weapon. Gareth gestured to the footage. We told you Earth wasn't here to wage war. We told you we had no interest in revenge. We only asked for accountability. But the Zarkant Dominion chose fear over honesty. Delegate Harrowan, still more mist than body, spoke again with concern. You orchestrated psychological warfare across sovereign territory. What do you call that? Elegant, Gareth replied. Then with a hint more steel, and overdue. For the first time since Earth's induction, the old powers of the galaxy looked not at a curious upstart species, but at a force that had redefined warfare entirely. They saw weapons that didn't glow red or pulse with energy, but instead crept silently through data streams, through words, through narrative. Colonel Lynn spoke now, her voice crisp and practical. Zarkant Dominion relied on closed-loop encryption across over 80% of their internal systems. We didn't need to break them. We just introduced uncertainty. We made them suspect their own command chains. The rest followed naturally. Gareth turned back to the assembly. Fear doesn't need a trigger. It only needs a mirror. Delegate Cyric leaned in, antennae twitching. Then what is your endgame? We've already achieved it, Gareth said. The Dominion's capacity to commit atrocities without consequence is gone. Their aura of control is shattered. And now every empire in this chamber understands that Earth's restraint is not born from inability, but from choice. He stepped back. The chamber dimmed slightly as systems registered new updates. Planetary governors defecting, Zarkant AI malfunctioning across naval installations, and a massive data dump, compiled and released by Earth's Ministry of Truth, containing detailed Dominion war crimes, evidence-backed, verified, irrefutable. Krovax had not returned. Word had spread that his own security detail had turned on him during a loyalty purge. His last broadcast was a panic scream about infiltrators and betrayal, unsubtle, hysterical, and tragically timed. Truan, who had never before admitted admiration for another species, now studied Gareth with narrowed eyes. You never cared about the colony. Gareth's smile dropped by a fraction. Don't mistake our silence for absence. We care more than you understand. But caring doesn't mean screaming. It means acting. Quietly, Truan said. Precisely. Colonel Lynn received a silent ping on her retinal display, then nodded to Gareth. He took a final step forward, tone now colder, almost imperceptibly so. We are updating our diplomatic doctrine, he said to the entire chamber. Effective immediately, Earth will no longer recognize the legitimacy of any regime that utilizes mass targeting of noncombatants. If your leadership engages in genocide, your government forfeits all access to Earth diplomatic relations, trade routes, and protection pacts. We will not declare war. We will not issue ultimatums. We will simply make your systems irrelevant. By force, someone asked. By entropy, Gareth replied. And we're very good at entropy. A collective, unspeaking understanding passed through the delegates. A line had been drawn, not with lasers or swords, but with language and consequence. Earth had become not a force of conquest, but a reckoning. The kind that couldn't be bargained with. The kind that arrived wearing suits, sipping coffee, and smiling as the old systems collapsed under the weight of their own crimes. The silence was broken by Sin Zhao, who had entered quietly and now took her place. Her multifaceted eyes regarded Gareth, her tone formal but laced with reverence. Then this is not a war. No, Gareth said, and for the first time his voice dropped an octave. This is the game board being turned over. Because it was always ours. You just didn't see it. The lights flickered slightly. The chamber AI recalibrated as new dominance algorithms detected that Earth's leverage metrics had surpassed all predictive thresholds. Political gravity, once rooted in tradition and bluster, now tilted hard toward Earth. And yet, Gareth still smiled politely, as if discussing weather. As he turned to leave, the screen behind him lit up with a quiet Earth broadcast, looping once before fading. Humanity prefers peace, but we've never forgotten how to win. Colonel Lin walked beside him in silence until they were out of earshot. Only then did she speak. They're going to ask for terms. They already are, Gareth replied. They just don't know which ones we're willing to accept. They reached the lift, the doors whispering open. As they stepped in, she glanced up at him, her expression unreadable. We just dismantled an empire, she said. With no battles, no casualties, just doubt. He tilted his head slightly, then added with quiet finality, the rook moves alone. And everyone forgets, the rook is not a pawn. The doors closed, and in the chamber behind them, the galactic order began to rewrite itself, one frightened whisper at a time. The emergency session of the Galactic Council opened under a pall of forced neutrality. The hololights above the chamber cast sharp shadows, bouncing off polished armor and shimmering diplomatic garb. But there was no ceremony in the air today, only containment. The Zarkant Dominion had collapsed into itself like a dying star, and the delegates were here not to debate the cause, but to ask the question none had dared speak aloud. What did Earth want? Every species was represented, some out of duty, others out of fear. Even the aloof Eldera Collective, who had not attended a council session in 42 years, had sent 2 masked envoys. They stood unmoving, draped in veils, as if hoping to remain unseen by the gravity that now emanated from Earth's delegation like radiation from a silent black hole. Ambassador Gareth Wren stood alone at the center of the chamber, without an entourage, without armed guards, and without notes. His presence felt surgical, sharp, quiet, and terrifying. A smile sat on his lips, not as decoration, but as a weapon. And beside him, unmoving, stood Colonel Mara Lin, her insignia exposed, her expression unreadable. Moderator Sin Zhao tapped her claw against the lectern 3 times. Ambassador Wren, the Council recognizes Earth's right to address the chamber. This session has been convened at the request of multiple member civilizations seeking clarification on Earth's strategic posture and intent. You may begin. Gareth inclined his head. Thank you, moderator. Honored delegates. I'm told there is concern, and it is valid. When structures collapse, dust follows. He let the metaphor hang. Not poetic flourish, more like the ticking of a clock. The Zarkant Dominion is no more. Its central government has fragmented. Its citizens are rioting. Military governors are defecting. And its fleets are eating themselves alive. This outcome is not the result of kinetic action by Earth forces. It is the consequence of truth. A truth so unpalatable, so raw, that their own system rejected it. Delegate Truan, feline features tense with restraint, spoke from the 4th tier. You say you did not destroy them, but you made it inevitable. Gareth turned slightly toward her. No, they destroyed themselves the moment they believed their crimes would go unnoticed forever. We merely made sure the lights were turned on when they slipped. Delegate Harrowin's gaseous form rippled with unease. They were powerful, arrogant, but still a member of the council. You acted without consent, without discussion. We acted because no one else would, Gareth replied. Earth did not bypass this council. The council abdicated. We brought evidence. You brought silence. We asked for accountability. You offered regrets and stalling motions. Meanwhile, children's bones were still cooling under the soil of Grelthus. A tremor passed through the chamber. Gareth's voice remained calm, but now every syllable carried iron beneath silk. Earth does not recognize the moral authority of those who protect war criminals for the sake of peace. That is not peace. That is complicity. Delegate Rhinax of the Solari, long a voice of pacifist diplomacy, spoke now with real concern. What is Earth's goal then? Retribution? Expansion? You've toppled an empire without a shot. The entire galaxy is watching. Gareth nodded. Good. Watch closely. He stepped toward the center, slowly. This is not retribution. This is precedent. From this day forward, Earth will observe a new protocol. Not military, not economic, moral. We are introducing a doctrine we call the axiom of irreversibility. Colonel Lin stepped forward, projecting a single phrase into the center of the chamber. It glowed red in galactic standard. Hostes humani generis. Enemies of humanity, Gareth said, letting the phrase linger in the alien tongues. This is not just Earth stance. It is a declaration of principle. Any government that systematically targets civilians, especially children, will be considered beyond diplomacy. We will not recognize your ambassadors. We will not trade, speak, or parley. You will be shut out, isolated, dismantled, not by bombs, but by truth, by exposure, by silence. Delegate Cyric's mandibles twitched. And if that fails? Gareth's smile grew, just slightly. Then silence becomes entropy. The chamber stirred. Delegate Vorish of the Vexery Triumvirate, until now silent, hissed low. You presume to enforce morality. Who decides what is just? We don't, Gareth said simply. The dead do. That stopped even the skeptics. It wasn't drama. It was inevitability. The statement echoed with the weight of graves. Colonel Lin placed another slate onto the central console. The chamber dimmed, and a series of recordings played, raw, uncut, unflinching. Footage from the Grelthus colony. Screams. Smoke. Children coughing blood through collapsed lungs. Zarkant drone pilots laughing in the background. Delegates looked away. Some cried out. Others stared blankly. It was a kind of data the Council had always classified, always diluted, always buried beneath reports and revisions. But Earth hadn't filtered it. They had displayed it in its full horror. Gareth stepped forward. This is not propaganda. This is primary source. This is evidence. This is why we do not negotiate. He paused, then added, and this is why they broke. He turned off the feed. The Dominion lost their empire not to weapons, but to mirrors. They looked at themselves and recoiled. Because they had no enemy to blame, no invasion to rally against. Just the weight of their own crimes. Harrowen spoke again, voice soft now. Then what becomes of diplomacy? Diplomacy survives, Gareth said. But it must evolve. From theater into truth. From delay into decision. From words into actions that carry weight. Truan's voice was colder now. And if Earth's standards change, if your truth becomes inconvenient to others, then Earth will face scrutiny in turn, Gareth answered. And we will accept it, because the day we fear truth is the day we become them. The room, for a long moment, fell into perfect silence. It was not consent. It was recognition. The galaxy had shifted, not because of a weapon, but because a single species had weaponized principle and wielded it with surgical, merciless precision. Sin Zhao broke the silence. And what do you ask of this council now, Ambassador? Gareth looked up. Nothing. Gasps. He continued, we do not seek approval. Earth did what was necessary. We don't require affirmation. We only ask that you remember this. Earth prefers peace. We crave it, actually. We garden. We make music. We build things that last. He stepped away from the podium, but turned one last time. But should another empire rise to murder children and wrap it in sovereignty, we will act. With silence. With exposure. With patience. And if all else fails, with precision. He nodded once more. Consider this not a threat, but a warning. Then, as if on cue, a final feed appeared in the chamber. One not projected by Earth, but by a neutral satellite station. It showed a Dominion general, bloody, unarmed, and weeping, being taken into custody by his own people. Civilians cheered. A child threw a stone. The camera panned, revealing graffiti scrawled across a bombed wall behind him, written in galactic standard in a child's handwriting. We remember. Colonel Lin turned to Gareth. We've made our point. "No," he said quietly. "They made it for us." As they turned to leave the chamber, Xin Zhao spoke again, quietly. "Ambassador, if we are to rewrite diplomacy, where does it begin?" Gareth looked over his shoulder. Truth. He didn't wait for the closing protocols. He walked out of the council chamber and into the corridor with Lin beside him. The weight behind them lingered, like ozone after lightning. Delegates didn't resume conversation for almost an hour. Some looked at their aides and whispered contingency plans. Others called for immediate votes on war crime statutes. A few sat in stunned silence, replaying every word Gareth Wren had spoken. In the emptying chamber, the Earth insignia on the central dais shimmered in the artificial light. 2 circles. A planet inside a crosshair. And beneath it, carved into the council records in permanent script, "We do not negotiate with murderers." It wasn't a threat. It was the new standard. And every civilization that had ever whispered in shadows now knew. The wolves no longer wore disguises. They wore suits.